And a very happy Monday to you at 12:08 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Culver City.
Well, John, now that she's been a professional broadcaster for quite a few months, let's see if former Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price has calmed down.
So many times people ask me, why can't you sue these people telling these lies about you?
I love the fact that podcast is just her getting even tour.
Oh, and it gets better. Pamela Price took to the podcast waves today to claim that her successor, the new district attorney, who is also a black woman, is a racist.
The new DA, Ursula Jones Dixon, took these actions in her first 100 days in office. DA Jones Dixon has fired at least 10 attorneys and possibly 11. Another 8 left, and at least one attorney was placed on paid administrative leave. 6 of the 19 lawyers impacted by her personnel decisions are black. DA Jones Dixon has fired at least 11 staff members and placed one person on paid administrative leave. 11 of the 12 staff members impacted by her personnel decisions are black or Latino. Her personnel decisions represent a whitening of the office, leaving the distinct impression that she has targeted black employees in an office with a long history of discrimination and racial bias.
Well, that's the well that she goes to.
Everyone's a racist, including the black woman that was appointed for my job after I got recalled.
Well, if Pamela Price is smart, she wouldn't be going to that well anymore. She'd be throwing some coins in it and making wishes, because that's the only way she's getting back into office.
She called me a crime boss.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. A lot going on in the world, not only today, but since we last met up, which was on Wednesday of last week, where we, of course, bombed nuclear sites over in Iran, and Iran responded today by launching missiles at Qatar. According to the latest breaking news, Iran says the missile barrage on Qatar was the same number of bombs used by the United States on its nuclear sites, signaling a likely desire to de-escalate. So there you have all the latest going on in the Middle East. I'll tell you, it's one of these tricky situations where if you give me all the information, I could tell you what to do. If we know that Iran actually has the weapons that they are believed to have, then bombing them is a no-brainer because you don't want crazy people to have access to those bombs. So if it's true, then bomb them and get rid of it and let them start back from scratch. And the guy in charge over there is in his 80s. So they'll likely have new leadership lickety-split. However, if they're just bluffing, if they're playing cards and they really have a bad hand, but you look at them and you think, I could see a full house over there, and you get it wrong, then you're stirring the pot for no reason. And right now, we don't know if they had the nuclear weapons that we believe that they had. In Iraq, of course, we got that one wrong. But in Iran this time around, it seems like there's more consensus, at least from our allies in that region, that they think that they actually have those weapons. But time, of course, will tell in a situation that is developing on a very fast basis. If there are any press conferences regarding what's going on over in that region that happen, we'll take them live right here for you. So don't worry about that. All right. Now, back in California, we have a race for governor in 2026 that's getting kicked into high speed right now as we speak. Over the weekend, the Hill newspaper reported that Kamala Harris is now looking like a likely candidate for governor. She said she was going to take the entire summer to deliberate and decide whether or not she was going to run for governor. But the Hill is now out saying that it's looking more likely than not that she's in, Well, that would certainly cause the field to scramble, as a number of candidates, Republicans and Democrats, have already declared their intention to be candidates for governor and have officially filed the paperwork, including former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Baccaria, and, of course, our favorite, Kaite Porter.
Orange County Congresswoman Kaite Porter.
Paul!
And recently, she did a sit-down.
Kaite Porter went up to Bakersfield to do a long-form interview with KBAK, the local news channel up there. And the best part about when a gubernatorial candidate goes to Bakersfield is the last question of the interview, which is usually, what do you love about Bakersfield? Katie?
I grew up on a farm that had cows and pigs and corn and soybeans in Iowa. So this is obviously very different. It's a lot easier to stop along the road and get some fruit and nuts and tasty treats.
It all comes back to food. So she's campaigning up and down the state, and she's stopping at all of the farmers markets.
She's stopping at all those fruit stands along the freeway.
Well, maybe she's just picking them right from the vine.
How many peach pits are in the back of that minivan?
I don't know, but there's a lot of trash in there. That I can guarantee you.
All right, without further ado, let's hear Kaite Porter's interview in the Central Valley with KBAK.
Well, first of all, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Of course, this is Bakersfield, so for the first half of the interview, the reporter forgot to turn his mic on.
I was about to say, he sounds like he's in the men's room.
Obviously, you're
halfway through it, he does fix it. But I figured I might as well leave it like this.
Obviously, you're no stranger to running for politics, but for people who don't know you, tell me a little bit more about Kaite Porter.
I am a mom of 3 kids. I live in Orange County, California, in a purple area, represented about half Democrats and half Republicans.
Well, technically, you live in subsidized teacher housing.
Yeah, you live in a house that we all own.
Half Democrats and half Republicans in the U.S. Congress for 6 years. And in Congress, I think I was best known for my work on oversight, making sure the government is accountable.
That's no one way of saying I didn't write or pass any legislation that mattered.
It also explains away your license plate.
To the people, accountable to taxpayers, is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So sometimes I used a whiteboard, and sometimes I just used...
Oh, boy, we're already into the prop comedy here.
I'm the chick with all the props. I've got the whiteboard and the minivan.
Sometimes I used a whiteboard, sometimes I just used words, but trying to make sure whether it was making sure COVID testing wasn't costing families, making sure COVID testing...
That's your big congressional accomplishment?
Well, when she ran for the U.S. Senate, she did it on earmarks and corporate PAC money.
Making sure COVID testing was free, whether it was making sure our government was doing what it promised. That's really what I'm running for governor to do, is to keep up that work.
And so you announced your candidacy rather early.
This poor guy still doesn't realize his mic isn't working.
Nope.
And so you announced your candidacy rather early. We were talking about this, a little bit ago. Why jump in when you did? I mean, this many months out from Election Day.
Well, we have some candidates who've been running for governor for, I think, 3 years already.
That is true.
Which one got in first?
I think Tony Atkins got in like at the beginning of last year. Maybe Tony Thurman. All the Tonys got in a long time ago.
Tony.
We do have 3 Tonys.
So it's a year.
Who knows? When did Eleni Kanalakis say that she was running?
You know what she needs to do? She needs to win an award on Broadway so she can be a Tony too.
So it's a year from the primary election. Right now it'll be next June. And so this is a big state with a lot of diverse communities, a lot of interesting people, a lot of big ideas, and some real challenges. So if you're serious...
That's a whole lot of nothing you just said.
This is what she's doing. It's nothing but platitudes and running on federal issues.
If you're serious about making California a better place for families, a better place for kids, a place that people want to move to, then you need to do the work. And that work takes time, and it takes a lot of listening.
That was nothing. She said nothing.
Which is funny because she spends a lot of time talking.
So we'll talk a little bit about the Senate run.
Mic's still not working, but we're going to get there. At some point, it clicks on.
So we'll talk a little bit about the Senate run a little bit later on in this, but you've obviously run for a statewide office before. What about this race for governor feels different this time, maybe compared to the Senate run or even just for Congress?
I could tell you the answer to that. She has zero interest in any of the subject matter.
When I launched my first campaign, it was only 6 or 7 years ago. It was for Congress in 2018, right after Donald Trump had been elected.
There we go.
Back to Trump.
Trump had been elected the first time. And so I'm inspired again by that same energy. Trump is attacking Californians, and it's hurting all of us, whether you supported President Trump or not. He's still hurting us. He's hurting our economy. He's threatening our agricultural economy with his attacks on immigrants, for example. And so I want to make sure that California can thrive. I really care about making sure that we have a strong and stable economy. It's not enough that California is the fourth or fifth biggest economy. I want to have...
What? The Gavin says that's all it needs to be.
Here's what's going to happen. Because when Gavin was looking DOA for his run for the presidency, and Karen Bass was looking like she would not be reelected as mayor, what they did to recalibrate was to federalize everything. It's not my fault that the fires burned down Pacific Palisades. It's Donald Trump's. When you look at what's going on with the rioting in downtown L.A., it's not my fault. It's not their fault. It's Donald Trump's fault. And in a state that is dominated by Democrats, if you just blame Donald Trump for everything and you set yourself up to be the foil, then you benefit because Democrats outnumber Republicans by wide margins statewide and by even wider margins in Los Angeles. So if that's what you do, it'll work out okay for you. So the Kaite Porters of the world and the Antonio Villagoses of the world and the Eleni Konolakises of the world, they're all watching this and they're all saying, okay, he looked like he was dead meat and now he's viable again and this is how we did it. This is what I'm going to do too. And I think the race for governor in California is going to be featuring a bunch of Democratic candidates who are all jockeying to be the next foil for Donald Trump.
I want to have the best economy, and that means making sure that we have jobs for today, but also jobs for the future, and making sure that people can afford to live here. Housing in California is too expensive, not just in the coast, not just in San Francisco. Housing is too expensive for families right here in Bakersfield.
That is true.
It's expensive all over the state of California.
But what exactly do you do to fix that? Oh, we don't know. We know that it's expensive.
You have to hate on Donald Trump. If you hate on Donald Trump, it makes everything cheaper.
And so you touched on it a little bit there, but what are some of the biggest issues facing California in your mind?
Well, cost of living is number one. That's why people are moving out or not moving here. We see this even at our University of California or Cal States. People coming here.
Except for the ones that are in teacher-subsidized housing, of course.
Oh, yeah. You know, if she wins, she would be the first person in public housing to be governor.
People coming here, getting world-class educations, and then moving because they're not sure if they can afford to raise a family here. They're not sure if they can afford to save for retirement.
No, they're sure they can't afford it.
Yeah, that's not a jump ball, Katie.
To raise a family here, they're not sure if they can afford to save for retirement here. They're not sure if they can afford to buy a house or rent an.
You want to talk about the real kitchen table issues here? I was just in Texas for a week. Margaritas are around $10. California, margaritas are around $20.
Not at Islands at happy hour.
They can afford to buy a house or rent an apartment here. So we have to think about what's the government's role in bringing down those costs. So housing is the biggest chunk of nearly everyone's budget, and California needs more housing.
How?
What they want is they want more subsidized Section 8 housing, and that benefits a tiny population of people, none of whom are in this audience.
It turns all of it into a giant lottery system, and because you still continue to not build the kind of housing that's needed, which is starter single-family homes, the price of those keeps going through the roof, which is great if you already own one and impossible for you to break into the market if you don't.
Bingo.
We need more housing of every kind. We need more housing for seniors, for students. We need more housing for young people. We need housing in urban areas. We need more housing in rural areas, too.
She's back to saying nothing.
Why even bother if you're her? I guess you think, okay, I just spent a ton of money running for U.S. Senate. My name ID is high. I might as well give it a try. But she doesn't care about any of this stuff.
And so making sure we can think about how can we loosen regulation, change the regulatory process in a smart way that goes true to our goals of making sure we're protecting our environment. But we can't have permitting taking 3 and 4 years because it's driving up the cost of housing. It takes about 2 years longer to build an apartment building here in California than it does in Texas. And that 2 years translates to more money. Time is money when you're building, and those costs are being passed along to California families.
And, of course, that is professional contractor Kaite Porter.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And, Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Will writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Love the show start. A brief synopsis about Iran, then right back to California, where Iranian leadership would be a welcome improvement.
And if you missed a show from last week and you want to find out what you missed out on, Randy, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get one of our apps. Get the KABC app, get the KSFO app, and you can download everything that we've got.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And, Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Al writes in, listening from the Port of Oakland about Kaite Porter. Doesn't she know that whiteboards are racist? To be fair, she did mention fruits and nuts, and my father always said California was the land of fruits and nuts. I'm sure Sheng likes that, so let's hear it, guys.
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
Here's what I'm curious about. I wonder if she thinks she's going to have appeal in Bakersfield. Who in Bakersfield is voting for her?
Maybe she bought their strawberries.
I grew up on a farm that had cows and pigs and corn and soybeans in Iowa. So this is obviously very different. It's a lot easier to stop along the road and get some fruit and nuts and tasty treats.
Do you remember, and it is one of my all-time favorite Kaite Porter drops, when Kaite Porter was running for Senate and she was flying up and down the state, apparently she was getting out of her seat to harass the flight attendants and the pilots about voting for her.
Oh, yeah. And you're not even supposed to be able to go into the cockpit during a flight.
I think she knocked on the door.
That door is like reinforced steel.
The little peephole that's in the back there, did she put a Kaite Porter for governor sticker on there?
Maybe she did. I don't know. Maybe it's on the drink card.
Let's go back to this interview. Kaite Porter did a sit-down with KBAK in Bakersfield as Kaite Porter tries to secure the support of the Central Valley.
Well, and so you talk about kind of making some...
This guy's mic is still not working, but I swear it's going to be fixed soon.
Well, and so you talk about kind of making some of those reforms to the permitting process. I mean, so how exactly do we go about doing that?
Very good question. Kaite Porter just bloviated how we need more housing, all kinds of housing for everybody. How do you do that?
California has a law called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and its purpose is one that I strongly agree with.
That means that you're not going to kill it, which means you're not going to do anything.
If you want to make sure that CEQA doesn't ruin people's lives, you need to drive a stake through its heart.
Making sure we're thinking about protecting our environment, making good decisions about when we build something, it is going to have an environmental effect. But that law has been abused. It has been used to simply stop building projects when we desperately need them. So there's good bills right now in the California legislature. We'll see if those bills get across the finish line this session. If not, they're going to be my top priority as governor. And also...
This means nothing. Gavin will tell you he's made like 50 changes to CEQA. And guess what? It's still impossible to build here.
And it's not getting better anytime soon.
And also thinking about how can we invest in energy, in California's energy future. We're slow on permitting for those jobs of the future as well.
Okay, she knows she's in Bakersfield, so you know she had to say energy. I think it's time for the oil question.
Well, there's a lot of oil in Bakersfield.
You touched on it there, with energy. Obviously, here in Bakersfield in the Central Valley, oil and gas is a major part of this economy, and a lot of people here feel like
there, he fixed his microphone.
All right, glad you could join us.
Democrats in the state of California is kind of leaving that industry behind. They really want a fighter for that industry. Do you feel like you're a fighter for the oil and gas industry, and why?
No.
No, they all want to kill it. In fact, that was part of Gavin Newsom's platform.
Well, clean energy is going to be not just California's future, it's actually going to be the world's future.
Okay, she's not going to get any oil money if she says that.
Nope.
Well, clean energy is going to be not just California's future.
By the way, if we have time later and we have a empty show, I got to play you Viragosa when he sat down with these guys a couple weeks ago, because he was all about that oil money.
Well, it's so weird because they hate oil because oil in their mind is destroying the planet. And if you believe in electric and you believe in electric vehicles specifically, then Elon Musk is your savior, but they all hate him too.
You know, I explained to someone that I know in Dallas last week about what's going on with California's gas prices, how with the low carbon fuel standards, the gas tax increase, and the closure of 2 refineries, we could be seeing $8 gasoline by the end of 2026. And this person's response was, that's going to turn that state red.
It could. And did you see, by the way, that Newsom, as he's trying to outlaw gas-powered vehicles, he signed something over the weekend that would make lowriders legal again? Those lowriders that bounce up and down. You saw them in all the movies in the 1990s. Apparently, there was something that was passed that bans them, where that's not allowed anymore. And now he's trying to bring them back.
That's an interesting one.
Well, clean energy is going to be not just California's future, it's actually going to be the world's future. There's a reason that our competitors like China are investing so much in green
energy. By
energy.
the way, before we get back to her, you know what this is all about? Trump did really, really, really well with Latino and black men in particular, young men that are Latino, Asian, and black. And the Democrats are furious that these people didn't vote for Kamala and they voted for Trump instead. And the whole thing right now with them is trying to figure out how to bring them back into their fold if they're going to win the presidency again. So they're all trying to find ways to appeal to young Latino men. So part of that involves going on the podcast. Part of that involves the swearing. But if you just were to look at it and say, okay, let's take the most racist view possible of young Latino men, and then let's base our policy position on that. Let's see. What do young Latino men spend their time doing? I know what they do. They get those cars that bounce up and down, and they slow ride along the streets, and it upsets everyone else. But if I tell them that I'm down with it too, they'll love me. So let's bring back the gang cars.
Wasn't Antonio Viragosa one of those car clubs?
A long time ago. Now he has one of those blue placards.
In green energy, it's going to be the way that we're going to have here in California the good jobs of the future, including good manufacturing jobs, which Bakersfield also has, and also has an opportunity to grow. So we're going to.
Yeah, she's not getting the Bakersfield endorsement.
No, she's not.
So we're going to need, for the foreseeable future, to continue to have an all-of-the-above energy approach. That means we're going to need gas, we're going to need oil, we might need nuclear, we're going to need to be investing in solar and wind. Right now, California gets 100% of its energy from green energy on some days, but not every day. That means
it's like 1 hour of some days.
Yeah. If we were to rely solely on green energy, we'd all be sitting in the dark.
That means we need more battery storage. That means we need.
You mean like the ones that catch fire?
Well, how about that exercise bike that she has in her kitchen? I wonder if we can harness that power for to keep the lights on.
Storage. That means we need more transmission lines. And Bakersfield has that workforce. So there are definitely going to continue to be oil jobs here, gas jobs here. California's rich in resources, and we're rich in resources to do every kind of energy, from geothermal, where there's a lot of opportunity in California, to more solar, wind, battery storage. And Bakersfield is going to continue to be a hub of our growing energy economy.
That was not satisfactory to the Bakersfield peeps.
No, and all of the above approach, which is essentially what she just endorsed, is something that still prioritizes different industries that have more political juice than others. And by taking the everything approach, what you're going to do is you're going to put oil and gas at the bottom of the list.
Well, and I think that's important to talk about is the workforce, being able to do this. But it seems like there's kind of, and at least from people that I talk to that work in the industry, there's kind of an apprehension to want to jump into that industry. How do we go about getting those people who, are able to work in those fields, but they just don't want to give up, the oil and gas that they're working on?
Well, our unions and our tradespeople have done a great job over California's history of training that next generation workforce. So we are already seeing a lot of the unions begin to develop training programs in things, for example, like installing electric vehicle chargers.
Oh, really? Have you seen the electric vehicle charging infrastructure in this state, Kaite Porter? Because I have, and it's a joke.
This is what they always do. They take an industry that's doing fine, they try to destroy it, and then they go, well, we'll retrain you. One of my friend's moms used to work at a factory, and after the Cold War ended, it was an aerospace factory, and after the Cold War ended and we passed NAFTA and a lot of those jobs moved out of state or out of the country, they said, oh, no, don't worry, we'll retrain you. And they tried to turn her into a beautician.
Installing electric vehicle chargers. That's going to be harder to do in a rural place, a place with long distance, than it is going to be in a coast. But already we have people who know, for example, how to lay pipeline. Well, guess what? It takes pipeline to do carbon capture. It takes pipeline to clean up these sites. So as we transition, and it's going to be a process, it's not going to happen tomorrow. We want to be thoughtful about making sure that each step of the way, we're growing our economy and we're keeping people employed in good, high-paying jobs.
That was a lot of platitudes with no real plan.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure she'll be real thoughtful about it, too. You have a nice six-figure job in the oil industry here in Bakersfield, and, well, those jobs just can't last forever now, can they? Especially if we pass laws that punish your industry and crush them like a walnut. So how about this? Why don't we send you down to your local community college and we'll retrain you? Because we need more nurses for those transgender operations. Have you ever considered that?
Let's talk about the race itself. Obviously,
oh boy, I think when we come back, it's time to talk Kamala.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, whenever the topic is Kaite Porter, the email is, well, let's just say lively.
Most of these emails I can't read. A few I can, and I'll read this one from Tyler in NorCal. Sorry, Kaite Porter, you can't blame Donald Trump for the 65 cents more in gas tax we're about to get smacked with in July. That's Gavin and the gang's fault. Cost of living Exhibit A.
That's an excellent point, Tyler, and thank you for sending us an email that's readable.
Let's go back to Kaite Porter on with KBAK in Bakersfield. It's time to talk Kamala.
Let's talk about the race itself. Obviously, there's several months out from the election, but there's kind of an elephant in the room here with former Vice President Harris. How big is her influence, even not being in the election right now, how big of that is an influence on your run for this race?
Right now what we're seeing is President Trump attacking.
There you go. If you were to spin the wheel after she's asked a question, you could split that pie in half. It's either going to be about Donald Trump or food. One of the two.
Right now what we're seeing is President Trump attacking California, and those attacks are not happening at some point in the future or later in the summer. They're happening right now. Our immigrants, communities, people who are U.S. citizens are having their rights violated in some cases. Trump is threatening to cut and has cut.
Question was about Kamala.
And now we're talking about Donald Trump because that's what we do now.
Trump is threatening to cut and has cut science research, investments in our universities, which have really always been sort of the jewel of California, a pride, a driver of opportunity for young people here. So the attacks from Trump are coming now. I think it's important then to be in the race now and thinking and talking to people about what we can do to push back. Medicaid funding is on the chopping block in Congress. That affects a whole lot
of
California.
Another federal issue.
That affects a whole lot of Californians who count on that to help them get health care. So I'm glad I'm in this race now. I've learned a lot in these past months. I wouldn't want to have given any of that up. I'm here today, tomorrow, the next day, winding my way up through the valley, talking with people, meeting with communities, doing some tours of some energy facilities. That's important work. And so Vice President Harris is going to make her own decision.
It took her 45 seconds to finally mention Kamala in the question about Kamala.
Does she think this is a good look? You know, all of these people wonder why Donald Trump was successful in politics, having never run for office before, never been in public office before. You ask him a question, he answers it. You may not like the answer, but he answers your question. There are very few people in politics who are like that. And the ones that are like that are typically pretty successful. Gavin Newsom, who I am no fan of, you ask him a question, he'll answer your question. It'll be filled with half-truths and certainly stretching the truth and everything else. But he gets somewhere close to an answer to the question that you asked. Kaite Porter and the rest of them just are incapable of doing that. And they think for whatever reason that this is going to make them popular.
That's important work. And so Vice President Harris is going to make her own decision on her own time. We all have as candidates, but I am definitely feeling like this time and this investment in Californians and hearing their voices is going to make me the best governor I can be.
And here's what's funny. Right now, she just won't even talk about Harris. She'll talk about Trump if she's asked about Harris. You know, if she stays in the race, as we get closer to Election Day, Kaite Porter is going to be the one that shivs her.
It's going to get ugly, and it's going to get nasty, and the game's going to be who can hire A. Smith first.
Well, whoever has the most money.
And so I have two more questions for you with the time we have. But in the past, you've been critical of billionaires and their influence with spending in these kinds of elections. You know, what can you say to voters who may feel like that influence is just too strong, and how can you assure them that you'll be able to beat them this time around?
I am the only candidate in this governor's race who has made the decision to not take corporate money.
Here we go. This totally worked in the Senate race, didn't it?
Those subjects gained zero traction. And we're going back to that well, too.
And the reason is that my job is to represent all of California. Lots of people work at corporations. We need corporations from small to large to power our economy. I want California businesses to grow and thrive. But I represent, at the core, I represent the families, the people, the voters, the students, the seniors, the nurses, the teachers.
Boy, it's too bad Bonta wasn't in this race because she could really go toe-to-toe with this guy on cliches.
Oh, can you imagine how much those two would end up hating each other?
They probably already do.
If they've ever been in the same room with one another, I would be surprised if he already doesn't have a restraining order out.
Every type of leadership is about meeting the moment and rising to the occasion, and this is what's required. And so we're stepping up and getting it done.
Kaite Porter, ladies and gentlemen, the pride and joy of Iowa.